Hello, my name is Arthur, and in the last video we did some debugging to our replace clicked function. And in this video we're going to go forward and it's going to be more reviewing because we're pressing on the limits of what I can do. So trying to type out the next function and debug and get things working to the point that they are working, which I think is reasonably free of any bugs, but I'm not 100% sure because things get a little bit complicated because we're dealing with the ability to have multiple tabs and run searches and replace things. And so yeah, it's really pressing on my own abilities with my short experience with C and GTK. So we'll look at what I did. In the last video, we added in a text mark because there was issues with invalidating text iterers. So we needed a mark. A mark is more persistent than an iter. And I'd added the mark outside of the else block when it needed to be inside of this else block. So I've moved the declaration of the mark and where we add it to the buffer to inside of the else block. And then at the end of that block, I've made the call to delete that mark. So the mark only exists while we need it. So that's the fix to the replace clicked button function call. So yeah, that seems to be debugged and working as far as I can tell. So yeah, we're not going to be really certain about all of the bugs, and yeah, people will probably have to sort some things out for themselves and work off of what I could offer here because yeah, we're, like I said, we're way up against my limits. So I do have the full replace all function working, and we have replace working. Then in addition, I've made it so that when we change tabs or we open a new tab with a search that's been performed, nothing can happen as a result of the previous search. Yeah, to do that, it's also made it so that when I change tabs, this one has basically, it's forgotten that it's done a search. So it can't do anything either without reperforming the search. With the search reperformed, it can do something. And perhaps the thing to do would be to make it to remove all of the tags so that it's clear that the search was invalidated. And yeah, we'll mention where to do that when we get there. So we'll just do we'll replace iter with some x's. So let's make it so it's case sensitive and it only removes the case sensitive version. So we can change right up here. We've changed that one, and maybe it would help to use larger text so we can see. So that one's no longer highlighted. We can replace all. Now they're all replaced. And let's just cut this out of here. Let's paste it into here. Let's put iter down here. And let's put them all back the way they were. So yeah, we have that functioning. Nothing will happen here. There's not going to be any accidents. There won't be any room for accidents. We don't have anything to replace here. Nothing can happen. It will be able to iterate and scroll still. And we're able to go between different documents and not run into any problems with that. As far as I can tell, and I'm only able to debug as far as I'm able to debug. So unless I come across a bug, then I'm not able to fix it. So as far as I can tell, this is debugged. So let's bring up the size a little bit so it's easy for people to see. So inside of the highlight result function, I've changed it so that it has a return value for a Boolean. And when the limit, and if we remember, limit is the number of search results. So once a text search is completed, it's given the limit, which is the count for the search results. So if limit equals 0, it will return false, and that's a check to make it so I can initialize a new tab so that it has no count value, and that way it can't get past here, and it's not able, we're able to check in replace all to get kicked out, so we can't replace all once we've changed tabs and reinitialized the limit value. Other than that, in this function, we've set the return false if it's going to get kicked out, and return true if there's a valid search that's been performed since a tab was opened or changed to. I've taken and I've commented out select range from all of the conditionals, and then I've just put one instance of it at the end. So that doesn't need to be repeated 4 times. It only needs to be here 1 time. And these commented out things, they could probably be deleted, but I tend to leave them for a while in case I've created a problem. These functions were moved so that they're above the replace all function. So as a reminder, when the button is clicked, the buffer in GPointer is the entry buffer for the replace word. It's for the replace field. So on replace clicked, replace all clicked, we check to see if there's a count value. So if it returns false, it just gets kicked out. On both of the replace text functions, I've expanded to make sure that there's something both in the search buffer and in the replace buffer. So the replace field and the search field are both checked, and they're both checked here now, which that should have been in place in the first place. So I realized that, and I put that in. For the replace all function, I mentioned that I was thinking about doing it through the highlight result function, and I did try that. I did get it working. I didn't really shop around to see if I could generate bugs and errors from it, like I have with this routine. But what I did find, it was pretty slow. So by routing it through the highlight function, it really slowed down the search. So what I did is I made a modified copy of the original search text function. So it does the same things. So we do our checks, we get the page number, we make some iters, start, end, and iter, the same as in the search text function. We initialize one at the start, one at the end, remove all of the tags, create a text mark, move the text mark to the start of the buffer where start iter is at. Initialize the end iter also at the start of the buffer. For this search, we need both the keyword and the replacement word. So the keyword comes from the search buffer, and the replacement word comes from the other entry, the replace entry. The Boolean to check that there is a search result in the while loop. The search flags, they're the same and work the same, and the reason why I move these functions up above this one, rather than just initializing the functions and leaving them where they're at. So declaring the functions, I should say, because we could have just declared the functions up here and left them where they were at, but I don't see any reason to do that. We just declare the one that way. So the while loop, it does exactly the same thing as it does in the text search. It always starts at the end iter, which on the first iteration through the loop, end iter is at the start of the buffer. But on the second iteration through the loop, end is at the end of the search result. So you get a search result, and then the start of the next search is the end of the last search. So that way it goes from word to word to word. This works exactly the same way as it did in search text. So we set the case sensitive here. This checks for whole word, so it's looking for the underscore and anything alphanumeric that's next to the search result in the event that we've chosen whole word. So that's the options in the search bar. So the only difference inside the while loop is what it does with the search result. So the first thing it does is it moves the mark to the end iter, so the end of the search result. It selects the range between start and end, so it selects the search result, deletes the search result. Once the search result is deleted and the R word, the replacement word, is inserted at the cursor, we've now lost our iters. They've been invalidated by the change in the buffer. So only the mark remains. It remains at the end of the word. So we initialize our end iter at the end of the last result, of the result that we currently just replaced, and then we initialize start at end. So it loops around until it runs out of results, and then it falls out, deletes the mark, reinitializes the limit value, so it reinitializes as though it got a count of 0, which is what -1 does if we remember the search text function. So we pass it the -1, 0 arguments, and that reinitializes the count to 0, so the limit is the name of the static variable in highlight result equals 0. And that will stop replace all, replace, next, and previous buttons from doing anything. The next place there was a need for a change, search text is all exactly the same. So this is almost exactly the same as the function up there, except it does a different thing. Largely here, what it does with the results. So there's possibly room to integrate, to have been able to do what we wanted to do by fixing this function to do less, or just to organize it a different way would probably be a better way to say it. But yeah, to get things working and debugged, I need to do them in the way that I do them, to not confuse a functioning function and make it dysfunctional. in the process. So that way I have two functioning processes that maybe questionably don't need to be quite written the way that they are. So the delete text and insert text functions, these ones are raising some questions for me as to whether I actually need two, because I could just as easily route both of these signals to one function called text changed, or entry text changed, or search text changed, maybe something a little bit more descriptive, and have them receive the same arguments and do the same thing, but only have the one function. So having two functions here is a little questionable, but it is working, and I've just left that alone. Now, I mentioned before that I commented this out at one point in the videos because it was causing a duplicate search. And I mentioned the reason why I comment something out is because it might prove to be a mistake. And that was actually the case with this one. It proved to be a mistake. The choice shouldn't have been to comment it out. It should have been to do this, because before it was just search text with no else. And it needed the else to stop it from doing the double search rather than just commenting it out. Because by commenting it out, I made it so if there was an already performed search that was invalidated by changing tabs, the search button wouldn't work because the else wasn't here and it didn't know to go and search for text. So that's a correction that was made. And from there, the next thing that I had to change was in when we add a new tab. So in add tab, the last thing that it does after it grabs focus to the tab is it resets the search results. So we send it the -1, 0. That resets the count to 0 and changes the static variable limit to 0, so that the next, the previous, the replace, and the replace all buttons won't do anything until a search is reperformed. The next place I changed something was in Notebook, when the notebook is made. And I gave Notebook a second signal, and the signal is switch page. So when a page gets switched, we go from one tab to the other. It calls page switched, and we reset the count value to 0, and the limit value is also, it's the same value, limit and count. Limit is a little bit confusing to use as the way to describe what's going on. So it sets highlight results perception of how many search results there are to 0. So the -1, 0 is to reinitialize so that there are no search results. That way when we're switching through tabs, the last search is invalidated, and replace all, next, and previous are no longer going to do unexpected things that they shouldn't be doing. Maybe in here it would be an idea to set in some itters and actually erase the search results as a result of switching the tabs. I did attempt to call a search from here, and that seemed to start throwing errors when I closed tabs, because apparently that does the same thing. So I'm reluctant to actually try to delete the tags even here, but it is something that people could explore if they were inclined to. Now, other than that, that's all of the changes that I've made. What I'll do is I'll start at the bottom of the script. I'm going to scroll up through it. So people who need to have a look at the whole script can see it. I've tried to make sure that I've put all of the script changes into these videos, and whenever I could, I've written the functions, but in this event, the function and debugging and getting it work, it took me a couple of hours. Well, frankly, people aren't interested in a 2 hour long video of debugging and encountering errors and things like that. Is not really great viewing. So I decided to just review this script at this point and acknowledge that I'm pressing on my own limits. I can't guarantee this doesn't have bugs. And really, what I can say is it's pretty much the best that I have to offer at this point. Which there's plenty of room for work in this script, and if a person's made it this far and gets all of this stuff working, probably the thing to do is to take what you learn and rewrite a notebook. And you probably end up coming up with something that is a little bit better organized, because this isn't organized perfectly. There's some things that shouldn't quite be that way. A lot of global things that I declared global when maybe they shouldn't have been global. And a few functions that could be streamlined some. So from here in the project, I'm not really sure what I might do. I might come back and do some videos streamlining this a little bit. It wouldn't hurt to get it streamlined some. I still don't have any idea how to do undo and redo. I may come back and do a hotkeys video, so we can do a hotkeys to expand the size of our text. Other than that, we've got all of the buttons working except undo, redo, and the infamous check spelling. Eesh. For the help menu, these two, I don't really see a point in making a video out of these. We've done 3 different pop-up dialogues. We reviewed 2 other warning dialogues, and these are just a couple of dialogues about that's documented. It's just another pop-up dialogue that has text in it. The same thing with contents. It's just another pop-up dialogue with some whatever text you decide to put into it. So something like an outline of hotkeys, maybe an outline of how the functions of how the software works or whatever. Maybe a note that a search gets invalidated the way it does, like the way that the search works. Could be the kind of stuff that gets put in there. I wouldn't know. I've never actually read one of those myself, because I don't have any difficulty figuring out how software works or what the buttons do. And when I don't, I just experiment with them. I've never actually opened. It's been a long time since I've actually even referenced a help file for a software, especially something like this. So that's it for this video, and yeah, maybe hotkeys, and if I figure out an undo and redo that is reasonable to put into video, I would do that. And on that topic, for undo, redo, and spell check, the more standard thing that most people would do to get something like that, like if they really wanted something like that to work and didn't want to have to racked their brain to come up with undo and redo, because those are not easy. Neither is spell check. A person could go to something like source view, and that's I'm not sure what you'd call it, a helper, a library, or what exactly it would get described at, but it was made to be used with the GTK text view. I'd imagine it's actually what is driving the spell check in this software, as well as the syntax highlighting in this software, and the undo and redo in this software. I would not be one bit surprised if that was source view behind this, because it does all of the functions that source view would provide, which is multi-language, syntax highlighting. It does the undo, redo, and spell check. So that would be one option for people who wanted to go further with something like this. Me, I'm more doing it for curiosity. I already have a text editor to write script in, right? So when I look at undo and redo, I'll be trying to figure out how it's done, because that's my curiosity, is how it's done. So I can't really say I'll do a video on that, because as I've said already, what I've done here is pressing on my experience level and my skill level for doing something like this. So that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful, and I hope I've outlined everything good enough for people. And until the next video, take care.